tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. All right. So, page number 220. Did I tell you that we are going to be doing group karma today? Or was it on Wednesday? It was on Wednesday, wasn't it?
You said Wednesday, Bhante. So I wasn't sure whether you are going to start today.
No, let's do it on Wednesday.
Wednesday. Okay.
Wednesday, because that's Sutra. Just double checking that I didn't promise anything else. Okay. I'll call you back. Bye. All right, 220. So I've got a response for our asankharika sasankharika question, right? Maybe what I will do is I will play the recording for you because he has sent me a recording. Would you like to hear his voice? Is the signal clear? Because it's lagging a bit on my side. Let me just...
It's very clear for me, Bhante.
It's clear in England also.
It's clear, Bhante.
Okay, so maybe it is actually from me. Let me just pick some applications.
Oh. It's the Lankava, I think.
Yeah, Lankava Tama, for sure. I'm just going to play the recording because he has explained it nicely. Oops.
සොයනන්ස මේ අසංඛාරික සසංඛාරික කියන එක සාමාන්‍ය පිළිගැනීමට අනුව ථේරවාදයේ සාමාන්‍ය පිළිගැනීමට අනුව විපාක රිසල්ටන්ට්ස් ඇති කිරීමේදී වෙනසක් නැහැ කිසිම. ඒ කියන්නේ අසංඛාරික හිතින් අසංඛාරික රිසල්ටන්ට්ස් සහ සසංඛාරික රිසල්ටන්ට්ස් කියන දෙවර්ගයම ඇති කරන්න පුළුවන්. සසංඛාරික හිතනොත් එහෙමයි. එතකොට අසංඛාරිකද සසංඛාරිකද කුසලය කියන එක විපාක ඇති කිරීමේදී අදාළ වෙන්නේ නැහැ. විපාක ඇති කිරීමේදී අදාළ වෙන්නේ අර ත්‍රි හේතුකද ද්වි හේතුකද කියන එක. ඊට පස්සේ උක්කට්ඨද ඕමකද කියන එක. උක්කට්ඨ නම් ඒ කියන්නේ උසස් කුසලයක් නම් ඒකෙන් උසස් කුසලයක් නම් ඒකෙන් උසස් විපාක සහ ලාමක නැත්නම් ඕමක ඒ කියන්නේ පහත් විපාක කියන දෙවර්ගයම උසස් කුසලයකට ලබා දෙන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් පහත් කුසලයකට එහෙම නැත්නම් ඕමක කුසලයකට කවදාකවත් උසස් විපාක ලබා දෙන්න බෑ. ඒකට සමාන විපාක තමයි යා ලබා දෙන්නේ. එතකොට මෙන්න මේවා තමයි විපාක දීමේදී බලපාන්නේ. අසංඛාරිකද සසංඛාරිකද කියන එක අදාළ වෙන්නේ නැහැ. සාමාන්‍ය පිළිගැනීමට අනුව. නමුත් සමහර ආචාර්යවරු දරිපත් කරනවලු මේවත් තරකයක් සන්නස. අසංඛාරික කුසලයකින් අසංඛාරික විපාක විතරයි ලබා දෙන්නේ. සසංඛාරික කුසලයකින් සසංඛාරික විපාක විතරයි ලබා දෙන්නේ කියලා. ඒක ආචාර්යවාදයක්. පොදු පිළිගැනීම නෙවෙයි. ඒක හරියට කියනවා මේ කණ්ණාඩියක් දිහා කෙනෙක් බලාගෙන ඉන්නකොට ඒ කණ්ණාඩිය මත අපිට පේන රූපය අපිට පේන රූපය සවනහස කණ්ණාඩි දිහේ ඉන්න පුද්ගලයා සැලවෙන්නේ නැතිව නිශ්චල වෙන්දියොත් එහෙම ඒ රූපයත් නිශ්චලයි. පුද්ගලයා හෙලවුණොත් එහාට මෙහාට වෙන්නොත් එහෙම කණ්ණාඩිය මත පේන රූපයත් එහාට මෙහාට වෙනවා වගේ සැලවෙනවා වගේ අසංඛාරික කුසලයෙන් ලැබෙන විපාකයත් අසංඛාරිකයි. සසංඛාරික කුසලයෙන් ලැබෙන විපාකයත් සංඛාරිකයි කියලාලු ඒ ආචාර්යවරු කියන්නේ. නමුත් ඒක තාම ඒක පිළිගත්වාදයක් නෙවෙයි. පිළිගත්වාදයක් කියන්නේ පිළිගත්වාදයක් නෙවෙයි. සමහර ආචාර්යවරු මෙහෙම කියනවා ඒක තමයි කියවෙන්නේ. ඉතින් ඒ උන්වහන්සේලාට අනුව දැන් හිතමුකෝ අපි මහා කුසල ඥාන සංප්‍රයුක්ත ඥාන සංප්‍රයුක්ත කුසලයක් කියලා. එතකොට ඒ කුසලයෙන් සාමාන්‍ය විදිහට අනුවනම් එයා විපාක දෙනකොට ඥාන සංප්‍රයුක්ත සමාන්‍ය. එතකොට සනස් මං කියන්නේ දුවේ මේ ත්‍රි හේතුක කියන්නේ ඥාන සංප්‍රයුක්ත සිත් හතරක් තියෙනවානේ. ඒ හතරෙන් අපි ගමුකෝ අසංඛාරික හිතක්, අසංඛාරික හිතක් ගමුකෝ. අසංඛාරික හිතකින් ප්‍රතිසන්දි ලබා දෙනකොට ඥාන සංප්‍රයුක්ත හොඳ උක්කට් හිතකින් නම් ප්‍රතිසන්දි වශයෙන් ඥාන සංප්‍රයුක්ත හිත් හතරම ප්‍රතිසන්දි වශයෙන් ලබා දෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වගේම ප්‍රවෘත්ති කාලයේදී ජීවත් වෙලා ඉන්න කාලයේදී මුළු මහා කුසල හිත් 8ම සහ අහේතුක සිත් අහේතුක කුසල විභාග සිත් 8ම කියන මේ 16ම ප්‍රවෘත්ති වශයෙන් ලබා දෙන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි මේ වාදයට අනුව මේ කේචි වාදයට අනුව ප්‍රතිසන්දි ලබා දෙනකොට ප්‍රතිසන්දි ලබා දෙන්නේ අසංඛාරික හිතකින් නිසා අසංඛාරික මේ ඥාන සංප්‍රයුක්ත විපාක හිත් දෙක විතරයි. විපාක හිත් දෙක විතරයි, දෙකයි එතන. ඊට පස්සේ ප්‍රවෘත්ති කාලයේදීත් අසංඛාරික හතරයි සසංඛාරික හතරෙන් තියෙන මහා විපාක. ඒ අසංඛාරික හතර විතරයි ප්‍රවෘත්ති කාලයේදීත් අසංඛාරික කුසලයක් විසින් උපදවන්නේ. අසංඛාරික හතර විතරයි. අහේතුක 8ත් එකතු කරාට පස්සේ 12ක් වෙනවා. එතකොට ප්‍රවෘත්ති කාලයේදී හිත් 12ක් ඇති වෙන පුළුවන්. ඔක්කොම පොදුවේ ගණන් නැතුව කිව්වොත් එහෙම අසංඛාරික හිතකින් අසංඛාරිකව විතරයි ඇති වෙන්නේ. හැබැයි අහේතුක සිත් 8 කියන එක සෝවින්හංශ අසංඛාරික හිතේ විපාක වශයෙන් දක්වනවා, සසංඛාරික හිතේ විපාක වශයෙන් දක්වනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ අහේතුක හිතවල අපි අසංඛාරික සසංඛාරික ભેදයක් කතා කරන්නේ නැහැනේ. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් කියනවා අසංඛාරිකයි කියලා. නමුත් අපි කියන්නේ නැහැනේ සම්පටිච්ඡන අසංඛාරික හිත සසංඛාරික හිත කියලා. ඉතින් ඒ නිසා මේ ඒ වගේ එහෙම තීක්ෂණ බවක් මන්ද බවක් වෙන් කරන්නේ නැතුව පොදුවේ අසංඛාරිකකේ විපාක පිළිහටත්
There's one more.
පොදුවේ සොයනහස අසංඛාරික හිතේ විපාක විදිහට ලැබෙනවා. අහේතුක හිත සසංඛාරික හිතේ විපාක විදිහට අහේතුක හිත ලැබෙනවා. එතකොට ඒ නිසා අසංඛාරික කුසලයේ විපාක කතා කරද්දී අහේතුක සිත් 8 ගණන් කරනවා. සසංඛාරික කුසලයේ විපාකේ කතා කරද්දී අහේතුක සිත් 8 ගණන් කරනවා. මේක තමයි සොයනහසේ ආචාර්යවාදය එහෙම නැත්නම් කේචිවාදය සාමාන්‍ය පිළිගැනීම. ඉතින් ථෙරවාදයේ අපි දන්න විදිහට අර උක්කට්ඨ ඕමක කියන එක තමයි, කියන්නේ කුසලයේ උසස් පහත් බව කියන එක තමයි මේ විපාකයට බලපෑමක් කරන්නේ. එහෙම නැත්නම් අසංඛාරික සසංඛාරික බව කියන එක බලපෑමක් කරන්නේ නැහැ. ඊට පස්සේ සොයනහස
හරිද? Was that clear? Damsiri? Nolene, yeah?
Bhante, if a friend asks me to help her for something, and I give her whatever she wants, you know, and then that's asankarika, isn't it?
It would have to come down to a clear aspect of when someone asks us for something, we think about it, isn't it? Before doing it. So I would say that's more a prompted chitta rather than an unprompted chitta.
Yeah.
Right? A prompted chitta than an unprompted chitta, because you have to think about it before you do it.
What if you don't think about it? You just say, yes, I'll help somebody. And then we willingly I help her. So what happens there?
Then of course, if it is almost instantaneous and, you know, without any pondering, you do it, of course it is then unprompted for sure, right? But in usual circumstances, when someone asks for us for something, it would be something that we, pondering is pondering might not be the most effective word to use, but there is some sort of thought as to yes or no. Yes or no. But when it comes to now, when it comes to a situation, for example, it's like, mother tells you to take out the trash, and you just do it. There are moments where you just do it as well, right? I think there is a level of trust, or there is a certain level of acceptance for that to happen. Yeah. So yes, of course, it can be both, but I think in most situations there is that sort of pondering, yes or no. Am I able to, or am I not able to? Now, was the answer, because it was essentially your question on the asankharika and sasankharika vipaka. Damsiri, you're muted, Damsiri.
The question was actually how you get a prompted resultant.
And that was the answer. The Theravadin belief. Belief is that the accepted Theravadin belief is that there is no difference between prompted and unprompted. That the only significant change maker in the question is whether it is a weak kusala or a weak karma or not a weak karma.
Omaka or utkrushta.
Yes.
But if you consider the other option we are talking about, that's the thing I'm actually I asked that in case if this the other group says that prompted results, I don't understand how you get the prompted results.
For it, isn't it?
Sorry?
A story for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We will ask him for a story. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Shall we continue? We had another one question, I remember. Did we have another question that I told? No, we sorted both the questions out. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Let's continue. Page number 220. We are doing death today.
Bhante, can I? Who is the person who responded that?
Well, he was. I mean, he.
Or you don't know to disclose.
Yes, I mean, he doesn't want to be disclosed because I mean he was with us in Burma.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, he's a prodigy. I mean, he's an absolute prodigy.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think all of our brains put together, is as smart as he is. I mean, he's
really all right. Okay.
He's smart.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, he actually when a year when he came, that was when the year that he came to Burma. He directly went into monastic education. He did not come to the university where I was. And he learned the language in 6 months, passed district exam within the year, and got the first in the district within a year. So you could imagine, right? Learning a language with grammar, all of that, writing, he's crazy. I mean, he's one of those characters. Okay. Let's read from page number 219, the causes of death. So okay, so it's the end there. The process of death and rebirth. 4 causes of death, right? 220. The advert of death is fourfold, namely through the expiration of the lifespan, 2, through the expiration of the productive karmic force, 3, through the simultaneous expiration of both, and 4, through the intervention of a destructive karma, right? So 1, through the expiration of the lifespan. The lifespan is an allowance of the time. 2, through the expiration of the productive karmic force, which is the karmic force enabling you or giving you the ability to live for whatever time that you can, right? So for example, we know that 3 hetuka is the most powerful. Dvihetuka, Eka hetukas are quite weak, so they die quite quickly, or even do not make it out of the womb. Or even if it is 3 hetuka, yet the karma which is brought about because of samsaric effects can be weak as well. 3 hetuka, but weak janaka karma. The Buddha's janaka karma is so strong that he cannot be killed, ever. However much one might attempt to, one cannot kill the Buddha, right? That is because of the paramitas, the paramatta paramitas that the Buddha fulfills whilst during his practice of the paramis, yeah? Then through the simultaneous expiration of both, this happens usually when it comes, for example, even, no, the Buddha is not an example of this. Can you tell me why the Buddha is not an example of this? All of you know the answer for sure.
Bhante?
Yes, Chama.
Is it because Buddha could have decided to live longer?
Yes.
Within the lifespan of the time. Yeah.
He was invited, wasn't it? Yeah. So remember when the Buddha says this thrice and Ananda forgets to invite. And then the Buddha says, you know, it is only if invited that we can stay. And then Ananda invites. And then the Buddha says, too late, Ananda, too late. You've killed me. Okay, he didn't say you killed me, but yeah. Right. Guide to para 34. The advert of death. Death is formally defined as a cutting off of the life faculty, jivitindriya, included within the limits of a single existence, right? Through a single existence. Though the expiration of the lifespan, through the expiration of the lifespan, this is the kind of death that comes about for the beings in those realms of existence where the lifespan is bounded by a definite limit. In the human realm too, they should be understood as the death in advanced old age due to natural causes. If the productive karma is still not exhausted when death takes place, through reaching the maximum age, the karmic force can generate another rebirth on the same plane or on some higher plane, as in the case of devas. Is that clear? If the productive karma is still not exhausted when death takes place through reaching the maximum age, the karmic force can generate another rebirth on the same plane or on a higher plane. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. On the same plane or on some higher plane, as in the case of devas. Yes.
That actually explains the stories Professor Stevenson has investigated cases of suggesting rebirth, because most of the people were reborn in here on the earth, and that may be the reason. That exactly the reason given here. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
The next, through the expiration of the productive karmic force, This is a kind of death that takes place when the karma generating rebirth expends its force, even though the normal lifespan is not exhausted. And there are otherwise favorable conditions for the prolongation of life. When both the lifespan and karmic force simultaneously come to an end, this is death by the expiration of both. Is that clear? Right? This is a kind of death that takes place when the karma generating rebirth expends its force, even though the karma generating rebirth expends its force, even though the normal lifespan is not exhausted. And there are otherwise favorable conditions for the prolongation of death. When both the lifespan and karmic force simultaneously come to an end, this is death by the expiration of both. Right? Death by expiration of both. Through the intervention of a destructive karma. This is the term for death, for the death that occurs when a powerful destructive karma cuts off the force of rebirth generating karma even before the expiration of the lifespan, right? Even before the expiration of the lifespan. The first three types of death are known as timely death, right? The first three, Kala Marana. The last one is called Akala Marana. An oil lamp, for example, may be extinguished due to the exhaustion of the wick, the exhaustion of oil, the simultaneous exhaustion of both, or some extraneous cause, like a gust of wind, right? Like a gust of wind. I think the Dhammapala Sutta gives us or expounds to us that a person who lives by the Dhamma, being protected by the Dhamma, is not a person or is never comes, or even his family does not experience Akala Marana. Right? Akala Marana. The reason for this is because a person who lives a Dhammic life probably has samsaric roots in Dhamma as well. Hence, because of that cultivation of goodness through the lifetimes, the person has the sense of protection, not by anything else, not by deity specifically, but protection by the good deeds that one has done through mind. Right? Good deeds that one has done through mind. Right? Any questions? No questions. Okay. The signs at the time of death. Now, in the case of those who are about to die, at the time of death, one of the following presents itself according to circumstances. Through any of the six doors, by the power of karma, through any of the six doors. So it's not only sight, remember, right? One, a karma that is to produce rebirth linking in the next existence. Or two, a sign of karma that is a form that had been apprehended previously at the time of performing the karma, or something that was instrumental in performing the karma, right? Performing the karma. Three, a sign of destiny that is a symbol of a state to be obtained and experienced in the immediately following existence. I think we have many records of people who claim to see different various things at the time of death. The sign of karma, this is often a karma which can even be basic, right? Can be done very foolishly when you are quite young. And this arises in your mind time to time, reminding you of the karma, right? Reminding you of the karma. That is what is mentioned here. So how would you suggest is a way of then releasing oneself from that sort of a karma? Any suggestions?
Is it before the death? Obviously, at the point of death, you can't do anything. So, Chittanupassana, would that work? If you're just, when it arises in the mind, you're watching the mind in the Chittanupassana and say this came up in the mind door, and just watching it rather than actually making another story, or I should have done this or that or whatever might process.
Chittanupassana can be quite dangerous, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'll explain why, Chamari, but let's get a couple of other questions first. Miri?
Kaya Anupassana, I would have thought, to actually try to see if you can watch your breath or bring your body, bring your mind to the body, and or even possibly Vedana, if you can watch it rise and fall if you have Vedana. That's what I would have thought.
Quite similar to Chamari. Okay, anyone else?
Bhante?
Yes,
Bhante? Yes. We can think that now we know the Dhamma. It's a mistake that we have done that when we don't know about the karma. But now we are a different person, like thinking like that, to forgive.
Okay, anyone else?
That these thoughts are things that arise and pass away. That's really Dhammanupassana. And therefore that, when they come, you realize that there is no permanence, there is no person, and you let it go. That's Dhammanupassana.
I think Vipassana, remember what we studied yesterday. When the mind is restless, you don't apply Samadhi. You apply Dhamma Vichaya and Virya. This sort of thing, which is the sign of karma, Satipatthana actually can be quite dangerous in this regard because it will create further restlessness of mind. Because you're applying that sense of concentration. What you need to do, actually Heyamali said it, but she didn't say the proper word for it, which is the usage of wisdom, panya, or rather in this case it's Dhamma Vichaya, which is to break apart the person who committed the act with ignorance and the person who is not. Thus taking away that sense of Atma from that sort of deed which was done. This cannot be done by Vipassana. Vipassana meditatively, yes, in the future. But at that moment, when you're trying to arouse or when you're trying to bring about a sense of stability, when the mind is already restless, you can't, it's very difficult according to, of course, what we even did yesterday. It's not going to contribute well because it will further cause restlessness in the mind, right? Especially if the predominant states of mind is already restless, right? If the predominant state in mind is already restless. Is that understood?
Bhante, in that case, if you have practiced Dharma Vichaya, right, Bhajanga, then it's easier for you to put aside your previous bad karmas, and you really bring about the dharmic or the good karmas into the surface, right?
Traveling on the path of Dhamma, there are certain effects of that sort. But Dhamma, we are specifically referring to a sign of karma. When a sign of karma arises, now I will tell you a sign of karma that I experience. You know, which is you know, when we are young, you know, we have these sort of bird ponds, you know, the bird ponds in the gardens where the birds come and sort of bathe themselves. Yeah.
Yes.
Or even, you know, we had this sort of pond where, you know, the frogs used to sort of lay their eggs, the sort of the gelatinous sort of string of, I don't know whether they were toads or frogs, whatever they were. And I used to sort of, you know, obviously being such as, you know, being a boy, a young child, you know, you tend to sort of play with these things. And, you know, then you take sticks and poke at it and blah, 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 you know. And then sort of, I often remember this sort of, it's very specific. You remember this sort of a thing. You know what I mean? You know, where you remember with very much specificity a certain thing, Dhamsari, right?
Yeah.
That only, now that can very easily become a sign of karma. Why? Because of the fact that you're seeing a being or you're seeing yourself doing it. But the thing is, we are older, we are wiser, we don't do that sort of thing anymore. But telling your mind or proving to your mind, proving to the internal way that the mind operates, that cannot be brought about by trying to sort of put in samadhi. What you have to work about is you must sort of wash it out. Wash it out in the meaning of you have to cleanse that sort of thought in a way of now through that sense of wisdom. Right? That is what we did yesterday, isn't it, as well?
Yeah. Yeah.
Applying that sense of wisdom, here it is going to be Dhamma, which is specifically, it's not just wisdom, because you have to really look at the being and separate that being from this being. You know, so the sign of karma can easily be something of that sort. You might have different thoughts as well. You know, it can be something that often appears as a result of something that you've done in the past, you know? Yeah. Now, from me, I mean, obviously I have, you know, said very rude things to my mother, my father, you know, I think I know that I have done maybe far more worse things, because that is a pranagata, but, you know, as a child, but, you know, we do make mistakes knowing that it is a mistake, or we do wrong knowing that it is wrong, but you do it. But it, you know, it's pretty weird where this specific thought then sort of comes to mind. I hope that for you as well, it's sort of, maybe you have something like that, maybe you don't, but a sign of karma appears in that sort of a manner. Yeah? Okay. All right. Dil, can you read Guide to Para 35, please?
Bhante,
yeah.
But what shall we do now? Mala is asking this question. What should we do to avoid that? Yeah, avoid that.
What should we do? It is in really seeing non-self. It is in really seeing non-self. And to see non-self, it is that application, that happiness that is born with what you are currently doing, and the true acceptance of the differentiation of being from the being who committed the crime to the being who is there now. So really, it is an internal, can you hear me?
Yes, Bhante. Bhante, by thinking that time it's a different person, now yeah.
Just because you, I mean, although I say thinking, it doesn't just happen through thinking. It happens through a complete and utter submission into Dhamma. Or else Dhamma Vichaya does not arise, no? Dhamma Vichaya will not arise just because you think of it. Dhamma Vichaya will not arise just because you listen to a Sutra Deshana. You have to submerge yourself with inspiration, with Shraddha, with all those factors of Indriya into the practice, that is when Dhamma arises. Right? Remember, that is why they clearly state Dhamma as Dhamma and not wisdom. Wisdom can arise. You can have that aha, those kinds of aha moments. But those aha moments is not what changes a being. It is when you, with reason, you truly engross yourself in the realistic idea with proof of Dhamma that you are not this person any longer. Is that clear, Hema Malik? Noeline?
Bhante, the first one, karma, it's good or bad performed in the same lifetime, or can it be previous lifetime as well?
A sign of karma is same lifetime.
Same lifetime.
Yeah. Same lifetime.
Okay. Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah. Because what they mean by sign of karma is karpu deya matakwe. Karpu deya tamana.
Sorry, Bhante, it's not that one. I'm talking about karma, the very first one.
Ah, the very first. A karma.
Yeah, karma that's good or bad performed in the same lifetime, or could it be?
A karma that is to produce rebirth linking in the next existence. So this is talking about the something that we have done in this lifetime, which is going to bring about the next existence.
Okay.
So it's talking about this lifetime.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante.
A karma that can bring about a pratisandhi. So trihetuka karma which can bring about a pratisandhi.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure whether it's this lifetime or could it be the previous lifetime as well. Okay,
Very
thank you, Bhante.
But
Bhante, sorry.
Hold on. But there are certain karmas, right, where you have to go experience this for a number of lifetimes to come. Right? For example, in the Apaya, right, where they say, for lifetime after lifetime, for this amount of time that this person was going from one Apaya to the other, there are occurrences of that sort as well. In specific certain existences. Right? But at that moment, right, what causes patisandhis are because of that karma that you have, you can experience, or that karma will bring out similar thoughts to suit the patisandhi aligned to that karma which was created.
Okay.
Anoma?
Yes, Bhante, is it now with the knowledge that you have, Dhamma knowledge, you apply that and you could erase it off? Is it something like that? Or suppress it, or not suppressing, but erase it off and you become another person, and otherwise you can do it at that moment, at the time of death. You have to practice it and then forget it, and so that, I don't know whether forgetting is the right word, but is it that, Bhante? That's how I understood.
This was regards to, I think, what Hema Mali asked, isn't it?
Yes.
It's not, I think the prime example is King Ajatasattu. Right? King Ajatasattu, who was a person who committed a heinous crime. And having committed so, he was destined to go to Avicii. But because of the Shraddha that he developed towards the Buddha and Sangha to the latter part of his life, he did not go to Avicii. He went to a lower hell, but not Avicii, right? And I think Ajatasattu is a prime example of that. He did go to hell, but he's not suffering as much as he would have suffered in Avicii, right? So that sense of non-self that we sort of develop through the Dhamma practice is definitely something that does help. Yeah. But then we also experience Anuma. If you remember, there are certain karmas that are so powerful that, you know, even if you are an arahant, it will come behind you. For example, Venerable Moggallana was murdered.
Yeah.
Yeah. Venerable Moggallana was murdered. And remember, Venerable Moggallana was murdered. It was an ancillary karma sprouting from that lifetime that he killed his parents or got his parents.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now he went to, for that karma, he burnt in Avicii. Right? He was reborn as a human. But still, that ancillary karma came in and gave a devastating blow to the most powerful enlightened being, to the third most powerful enlightened being in the whole Buddha Sasana. You can imagine.
Yes, Bhante.
Yeah. Does that answer your question, Anoma?
Yes, Bhante, I can understand. Thank you, Bhante.
Anyone else? Chamari? Sorry, yes, Mala.
Bhante, I was going to, about Noilin's question, the number one sign, karma. I thought if it's a way to come, it can, it need not be in the same lifetime. Supposing I had done some way to come in previous lifetimes, something very heavy, sort of that karma, it can produce rebirth linking in this lifetime. Not only in this present lifetime, but previous karma, can it cause rebirth linking?
It cannot cause rebirth linking. It can cause the circumstances of life to be similar to what that karma now allows your life to be. Now, for example, apparently, when a person suicides, right? When a person suicides, something that happens is, apparently up until one really comes into the Dhamma, birth by birth, apparently the person's life is drawn up in a way that he will suicide. Right? When a person is a home wrecker, you know, breaking up families, breaking up sort of friendships, that karma creates an environment for the person through lifetime where that person will not experience a full relationship, will not receive the love and companionship of friends or a partner. Yeah, you know, so that does in a way vibrate up until that karma becomes lapsed later on. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what happened to Isidasi, isn't it? She was a home breaker and it came back to her.
Yeah. Do not wreck other people's homes. No, I think you know, all of the personal, this is my personal experience with all the people. I mean, Colombo, I mean, you know, we have so many home wreckers, right? And you know this, if you live in Colombo and you know, you're a social person, you know who's wrecking whose home at what time of the day and at, you know, what day of the week, you know all of these things, right? And something that I've experienced, I mean, personal sort of not experience, I've seen is people who wreck homes, especially Kamesumi Chachara, die very unhappy, sad, and sometimes scary deaths. I have really seen it happening to people that I know for sure, as you know, that you would know what their lives were, who they were with, whose home that the person wrecked. And I have actually seen this not in one or two people, not in one or two people. I've seen it in so many people who have committed adultery in that sense. So, you know, it does. Those are very powerful karmas, especially coming in between families. That's a very, very powerful karma. You know, remember, even the Buddha said, who am I to come between the relationship of a mother and a son? Remember that? Yeah. The Buddha does not just mean it from a mannerism point of view. The Buddha is talking about the karma behind that. It is not it's not a thing to do, to come in between a mother and a son's relationship. You know? Yeah. Damsiri, you had something to ask?
The karma that you have committed this birth will be effective because you can't remember the karma you have committed in the previous birth. So it has to be a sign, right? So sign means something that you should be able to remember, right? We lost sound.
Are we talking about the second one?
The first one we are talking about.
Okay. No, this one you specifically, okay, let's go to the text. Now, in the case of those who are about to die at the time of death, one of the following presents itself according to the circumstance through any of the 6 doors of by the power of the karma. Remember, it is not 5 doors, it's 6 doors. It's including the manodwara.
Yeah, that's right, yes.
Right? 1, a karma that is to produce rebirth linking in the next existence. Right? In the next existence. That can be mano. Right? And
yeah, okay.
It is mano because there is no sign, remember. It is the sign of karma and the sign of destiny that is often with regards to, you know, the other senses, but can be mano as well.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because
so this one is mano mainly.
This is mainly mano.
Mano, yeah.
Mano, but it can be like this as well.
Yeah.
This sort of a karma can produce, or rather affect your life nearing the time of death.
Okay.
Let's say, dukvindila marenna, if you have the karma to really suffer and die, you will, you know, cancer or some sort of, you know, other sort of pains or whatever it is, or loss of a child. Yeah. The house burns down, you know, people go through very, you know, abnormal circumstances sometimes, nearing their own death. Chamari, yes, Chamari?
Bhante, I think what Malapunji was saying, the Veti Kamma or the Anantariya Kusala or Papa Kamma, it's called Anantariya because there is no space between this life and the other one. It will give rise.
Yes.
So if it's a Veti Kamma, I think the rebirth linking, then it's assumed will be that Anantariya Kamma. Yeah.
Very next birth. Next birth. But normally to that story is Ajatasattu's story. Right? Where now, for example, if you commit any of the Anantariyas, straight away it's Avicii. Right? And this becomes particular because Avicii specifically, it burns inch by inch without any sort of lapse or relax.
Respite, yeah.
And that is said to be the most vicious of all the hells. But Ajatasattu being able to get himself out of there, right? But it is also, remember this, if you go into the story of Ajatasattu, he did not follow the Buddha and accept the Dhamma to release himself of the karma. I think that is true Dhamma Vichay, and that is something we have to contemplate on our own. Right? You do not find an account where Ajatasattu would be said to be, you know, following the Buddha wholly because of to release himself of what he did. Right? The Buddha was so decent. When he preached the, what's the sutta? Remember? Digha Nikaya, Samanya Phala Sutta. When he preached the Samanya Phala Sutta, he waited up until Ajatasattu left to tell the Sangha, bhikkhus, if he hadn't committed what he did, he would have attained enlightenment and ended his samsaric journey today.
Yeah.
But he couldn't. Yeah. But he couldn't. Sorry about this. Hold on, just give me a moment. Yeah, very sorry. So, and I think it is very important to, you know, for example, because I think we all, sometimes the reason that we do good deeds sometimes because we think so much about death is not the purest sometimes, because we might be doing certain things to release ourselves of certain karmas. And that is not the way it happens. And that is why I mentioned it's not wisdom, it's Dhamma Vichaya, which breaks away, which really gives you the sense of separation from what was done. However, the karma can be so strong that the link cannot be broken even by Dhamma Vichaya. Why? That is why Ajatasattu could not attain enlightenment. Right? Now, if he truly had the karmic ability of the past to attain enlightenment, now what is disrupting his progress? It is that Veti karma disrupting the process. It is holding down almost the blessing that he had in his life. But one fine day when he is released from the state of hell, he is going to be the first, one of the first to attain enlightenment. But up until this karma is extinguished, he will have to go through it. This is not to say that he will not be able to attain enlightenment. He will be, but after that karma is extinguished. You know, it's like this also. If you take a person who's done a crime, who's done a crime, you know, he's sentenced to jail. And I think Switzerland is one of the only countries where it is illegal to penalize a person after the time is spent. I don't know if there are many countries like that, but constitutionally, Switzerland is one of the countries where it is illegal for anyone to be penalized on the grounds that he was a criminal, if he spent that time that he was given for the crime committed, right? However, when you come out of jail, you might have spent whatever, you know. The question is, or rather the mind, has the person truly now separated, or does the person truly believe that he has paid for his crime? Probably not, but take solace in the fact that he has done his time. Right? That he has done his time. For him to truly forgive himself and separate himself from that being, it takes far more work, not with time, not with prison, but with the mind. That is what Dhamma Vichaya is in one aspect. Does that make sense? And I would also like to ask, Chamari and Miri whether it was clear what I mentioned earlier. And I would really, actually, yesterday's talk was an absolute, I mean, I'm not saying this because, you know, I did it, but it came out so well. I think, you know, everyone must listen to it. It came out so well, and I was so happy about the way that it was, you know, it came out. At the end, it's 3 hours long, but I think every minute of it is so worthwhile if you can, you know, listen to the talk. And it sort of really explains with that sutta, the Aggi Sutta on the Bojjhangas, how, why the Satipatthana wouldn't work when the mind is already restless.
Yeah, I understand, Bhante. I just had a question about how, at that moment of death or time of death, I wondered whether your mind would actually be in a position to be doing Dhamma Vichay.
Oh, no, definitely. The thing is, some can.
Yes, I mean, if you, obviously like Arahants and like the famous priests and so on, yes, of course. But I'm thinking of people like us. That's why I was wondering whether, like Hema Mali said, knowing what we have practiced and understanding the Dhamma to a certain extent, whether the self of the idea of non-self can be thought of by practicing, by observing whatever is going on in the body at the time, because that's what would be most prominent, or of the mind, like Chamari said, for that matter.
Well, I mean, I would only, for your answer, Miri, I could only tell you this because I haven't died or I haven't had a near-death experience. Right? I can only tell you this, a story, which I have actually told before, I think, of this monk who I met in Australia. I forget his name now, but you know him, Miri, who stays in your cousin's place in front of Parliament Road. Right? That monk who was in Australia, remember you brought the daughter to the temple, and the daughter said this monk.
Oh yeah, Asita and this girl. Yeah.
So that monk, right? He, during the time of the final year of conflict or years, he went to the area that the Tamil Tigers were fighting, and the army and the Tamil Tigers were fighting, and he lodged himself in one of these houses that was abandoned, and he started meditating, and the bullets were flying across. He could hear the bullets. I mean, he had that sense of, I might die this very moment attitude. And he says, that it was the best meditation he ever did. That his insights of mind was so luminous with Vipassana. Why? Because he did it like it was his last moment on earth. I mean, in that birth. Right?
But that's a bit different, no, Bhante, from somebody actually in the process of death.
Yes, and I would also say no. I think it would depend on the conviction the person has, Miri, don't you think? If the person is truly inspired by Dhamma to a certain extent, but of course, if the person is, if the person has no meditation, all of that, then of course, very sorry. It's like, for example, this minister in Sri Lanka, she said, she was almost going to die, and she started sort of chanting poems about the Buddhaguna. When I listened to this, I more than Shraddha, I felt like this was fear, and where people tend to pray and people tend to sort of, start crying or do something like that, do something of that sort. And that is not in any way the Dhamma practice. Remember, Dhamma Vichay or anything connected to Dhamma calms down. You calm down with it, right? But if you do not have that inclination, sorry. It's a very sorry situation to be
in. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't think it will be possible, because death is a very difficult experience. In terms of, not because death might be painful or not. It's not on that grounds that I say that death is a difficult experience. Death is a difficult experience for those who have so much of clinging and craving. Yeah.
But that's why, like Hema Mali said, I think the idea that you have something that you're kind of after practicing, recognizing that, it is an impermanent situation and that, there isn't a you to die in that sense. If you are actually able to think those things through, not think, but actually experience those things through practice, then maybe that's a good way to go.
Yes, absolutely. And that is how Dhamma Vicaya works. But where, you don't need to essentially put effort to applying it. It gets applied on its own by the wisdom and vipassana power that you have.
Okay, thank you, Bhante.
It is almost as if, remember the stories of the Buddha, but we don't want to talk about the Buddha in his final birth because he was enlightened. But when we think about the Buddha as a bodhisattva, with his practice, the amount of compassion that he had even to people that were bringing him harm, right? There was his birth where in the Jatakas it tells of, he, as a hermit, he's meditating and he's just about to reach a specific state of jhana. He's just about to reach a specific state of jhana. And then these forest robbers come to the Bodhisattva and they are going to kill him, right? They're going to kill him. And they're like, you've seen our face, we can't let you go, we have to kill you, right? Although they understand that this is a harmless hermit, they don't want their faces to be revealed, as I remember the story. And then the Bodhisattva says, don't kill me, because he was just about to attain to a specific jhana, which he had not attained to as yet. And no, he was not about to attain, but he wanted to attain it before death, right? And he says, don't kill me right now. Can you come back in an hour or something, an hour or, I think it was a day or something, he says, right? Whatever it was, he says, come back, later, and you can kill me. I'll be here. You can kill me, no problem, but come back later because, I want to, he just says, come back later. And the robbers say, what if you run away? You'll probably run away, And then what the Bodhisattva does is he takes a big stone that was laying next to him and he crushes his legs, right? And he says, no, now how am I going to go, right? And in every aspect, the story is related as the Bodhisattva having this enormous amount of compassion both for himself and the people around, And this compassion is not, you would understand that it would be quite challenging if one was to imply this compassion. This was not implied compassion. This was compassion in absolute being. Where this compassion arose in mind because of that state, it was not applied, it was there. Because of his practice, it was already there. So that is the extent to which that, the Bodhisattva practiced. And that is also then another sort of an angle that we can sort of see Dhamma Vicaya as, where when Virya, Dhamma Vicaya work together, it applies in a sense of we don't have to do it, but it is applied on its own as it unfolds. The experience comes about, right? It's like, for example, a person where you're not thinking about metta all the time, but when something happens, the first thing that comes to your mind is a thought which is empathetic and compassionate, right? Because you have practiced it. You were not doing metta bhavana at the time. You didn't have to do metta bhavana. The thought that arose was with empathy and compassion. I hope I'm making sense. Damsiri? Damsiri, mic, please.
Bhante, the other thing is these people get very upset at the time of the death. That's all depend on the attachment you have at the time, because if you try to get rid of the attachment, right, then your death will be very peaceful. I have seen one of my aunts, actually, who has been looking after me when I was young, when she died, her death was very, very calm.
Yeah.
And last 3 words were Anicce Dukkhe Anatme.
Okay.
And she shut her eyes
without
anything. So it's all depend on the attachment to the world you have. So we have to think about that aspect also. And then I have another friend who had my friend, actually Mala's friend, a doctor who died, and even the body, I can see a smile in his face because he was a devotee, very strong meditation practitioner, and he was expecting his death. And even a couple of days before, we went and met him, and he was taking it so calm and so soft, and he has no fear at all. And then when we went for the funeral, I can see a smile in his face. So you can see you can imagine the last moment, the conditions he had, the mindset he had. So that's my experience.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And remember that, you know, I was speaking to Inoka. Inoka gave me a call in the morning, and we were speaking about attachment. And something that when we were speaking, something that came to my mind was, sometimes, let's say, you try to not eat something, right? And you now focus on the not eating of that object, right? Which is the food. The more you think about that food, now almost you're trying to let go of the food, but now it becomes more difficult, right? The more that you contemplate on not eating that specific thing, the more you want to actually eat it almost, And why that happens is because of the habitual tendency, again, the habitual tendency of the mind, not the habitual tendency. We have a more intimate connection to the object of pleasure compared to anything else, which is the practice. The practice is something new, no? Right? We have a more intimate and intense connection with the object. The more අපි ඒකට මනස තව ආවර්ජනා කරන්න ඒකේ තියෙන ඇලීම තව අපිට ප්‍රකට වෙනවා විනා ඒ ඇලීම නැති වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ හේතුවෙන් තමයි අපි ඔතකොට මේ අත්හරින්නේ ඔබ්ජෙක්ට් එකට වඩා ඒ ඔබ්ජෙක්ට් එකට ඇලීමක් හටගන්න අර රෙස්ලස්නස් එක, අර උද්දච්ච භාවය තමයි අපි අත්හරින්නේ. ඒ උද්දච්ච භාවය අත්හැරියම අපිට පුළුවන් කෙලින්ම ඉන්නේ ඒ තණ්හාව හටගත්තා වූ ඒ හේතුව විනිවිදා දකින්න. ඔතකොට මේ we are not talking about a piece of cheesecake or a packet of chips or strawberry something, or we are not talking about any of these things. We are talking about the foundations of mind which brings about the conditions for attachment to arise. Right? Because again, let's remind ourselves that tanha is one of the most powerful elements of kilesa in the mind. Without a developed mind, I mean, it is such a powerful kilesa that even anagamis cannot fight with it. It's still there. Right? So a person with a bit of emotional intelligence in certain situations of a mundane level would then sort of think, okay, I can't beat him. You don't pick fights with people you can't win, right? You're not going to pick a fight with Unilever as one small individual. It's going to be quite a, you know what I mean? If you're going to think very, very hard and try to get support if you're going to sort of do something of that sort. Rather, what you would do is you will find you will contact organizations, you will write to your MP, blah, 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 right? We have to, that is, eka thamai me, tikshana nuwana, eka thamai me, the word there is, the Pali word is upayashilatve, silatve, ned. Yeah, knowing, there's a Pali word, I can't remember the Pali word. Yeah, I can't remember the Pali word, but payashili vima, right? In how you approach the kilesa. And I think a good example of that was the packet of chips. The more you think about it, the more you look at it, the more you try to engage with it as a mental object, the more difficult it's going to get, because you really like that bag of chips. But if we now look at the non-self approach, which is you're not looking at the bag of chips that you love, you're looking at the craving, the restlessness, the elements of mind. Now it becomes something far more easier. Does that make sense?
Bhante, can I ask something, please?
Yes, dear. Please go ahead. Sujata, you can go next.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Bhante, you mentioned, Bhante, that even an anagami will find that craving difficult, Bhante. But I thought that by the time we become Sakradagami and we Kamachanda and Vyapada, and by the time we become Anagami, that those two have been released. Am I wrong in thinking like that? I thought they are finally... Can you hear me, Bhante?
Yes, I can. Can you repeat it again, please?
Yeah. You said a few minutes ago that even in the anagami state, that craving is still there when you were explaining about this craving for a packet of chips and things. But I thought that the first three fetters are gone, and in Sakradagami, Kamachanda and Vyapada weakened, and I thought by the time you become to anagami, that those two are completely eradicated, and you're left with the last five before you become arhat. But you now mentioned that you still have some tanha. So I thought it's only that, that arupa vachara, the takana rupa vachara and man and the restlessness, and the avijja was only one left. So I'm just asking, is there still craving when you are anagami? I thought that kamachanda, that kamaraga has gone off in the vyapada. That was my understanding. Maybe I'm understanding it wrong.
No. There is there craving? Is it only avijja that is left?
No, there are five. There are five left. That's kamaraga, the arupa vachara, and the rupa vachara, and the mane, and the rest.
By the time that you attain arahathood?
No, then everything has gone. After anagami, the last five. Before there are those last five, Bhante. So first three go, then two are weakened, then those two go. So that's the first five. And then there are only five left. But that Kamachanda and Vyapada, the ones which are gone from the time you become from Sakradagami to Anagami. So that Kamachanda has gone off there. So then that is that craving has gone off to the sensual desire. That was just the way I understood. Maybe.
No. I can't remember the hindrances that are eradicated.
Not the hindrances. I'm talking of the fetters, Bhante. In the fetter, there are 10 fetters. The first three goes when you're Sovan, and then two get weakened when you're Sakradagami, which is the Kamachanda and Vyapada. And then the next stage, when you become Anagami, those two are completely eradicated, leaving the last five to go from, and those are not to do with Kamachanda. That's gone. That's the way it's normally always explained.
Yeah, Bill, I think that's how I understood it too.
Thank you, Mihiri.
Yeah. So, yeah, sure.
I think Bhante, avijja, as long as you have avijja, then you have leftover attachment. Yeah. And that because of that attachment, you will be born in that Devaloka. What is that? It's a once returner.
Yeah, avijja and tanha. Let me get this chart up.
There are two different things. One is the moha, the ignorance of the sense of I remains last of all. No? That's the one that goes finally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is weakened at Sakaya Ditti stage, that is weakened, but that goes completely out when the non-self comes in, the anatta is recognized. That is how the last stage comes. But
right.
Yeah.
By the stage when you reach, okay,
yeah.
the first one, right, with regard to the fetters, the stream mantra weakens identity view, doubt in the Buddha, and the Silavata Paramasa.
Yeah. He actually breaks those, not weakens. Those three goes off. That's so the Sakradagami weakens. The
Sakudagami weakens, right?
Yeah.
Arahant gets rid of, right? Higher fetters.
Yes.
The Arahant gets rid of the higher fetters.
Ruparaga.
Yeah, Dil, are you going to let me continue?
Yes.
The Arahant gets rid of Ruparaga, Aruparaga, conceit, restlessness, and ignorance. Right? So then there is no Raga is there. Right? Raga is there. I mean, it is at this position that Raga is got rid of. No? It is because of that Raga that the Anagami will still be reborn in a certain place. It is that which is then let go on when by the time you become an Arahant. Because after you attained Arahanthood, you don't go anywhere. No? So yes, Avijja, and also remember, I mean, the simplest way to also again remember is Avijja and Tanha is the core of the cycle of Paticcasamuppada. Right? So as long as birth is, or that cycle operates, Avijja and Tanha are there. Okay. Sujata. Chamara, you can go next. Sujata.
Thank you, Bhante.
Sujata.
Can you hear me now, Bhante?
Yes,
please.
I can hear you, Sujata.
Yes, the thing is this, I was listening to Dharma series thing about seeing two people dying. Now, I have a very, very special experience how my mom died. If it's okay, I can tell you a little bit about it.
Yeah, sure.
Because she went up to 103 years old, but not a sick person, never in hospital, not with any medication, nothing, except for a little bit of kasaya once in a way, whenever the Mahatma comes. But, and she told us, when I die, my body has to go to the medical college because people will learn a lot of things by seeing my body. So now I'm wondering actually where she could be born again, human realm or anywhere else, because she led a lovely life.
Yeah.
And not a lovely mother. And everything I could say about her. She was a calm, collected, beautiful person. And her death was so peaceful. I happened to be in Sri Lanka at that time, mind you. But the funniest part, I never go, but that particular day, we thought we'll just go. And when I went 3 days after my going there, she asked me, how is the Queen? She loved the Queen, loves the Queen. Then I told her, I haven't seen her, but she's okay. She said then. Then I said, yes, and I'm talking. Then why on that process? That's all. Then we were around, we had servants all around watching what she was doing. Then she just did that and she shook her head a little bit. And Bhante, I felt there's something happening now. I touched her feet. Her feet were cold. And then then she turned the other way. That was the end of her life. So I thought what a peaceful death that was that I saw. I just thought I'd share it because it was such a experience to me.
Yes, absolutely.
It's only now, this is my 6th year after her death now.
Yes, Sujata, lovely. I think some people are just so blessed to you know,
very lucky that death.
Live lives that end in such a manner. Thank you, Sujata. So
That's all right.
Yeah, I mean, here is a chart of the fetters that are removed, and you know, it clearly states, I checked 2 sites. It says the same thing, right? I mean, it's quite obvious in a way, because you will not have jati or bhava if there is no tanha, clearly, right? It does not, it can't happen. It's because of the tanha that we have the repetitive cycle. All right, Chamari.
Thank you, Bhante.
Chamari. Miri. Chamari. Yeah, Miri, go ahead.
No, I didn't want to say anything, Bhante.
Okay.
Bhante?
Yes, Chamari.
Okay, I think, yeah. I think the chart you actually put on confirms what Dil was actually saying. Your example was about having some tanha towards food, that could happen to, yeah?
I was not meaning that it was food. I was meaning that is one type of tanha. No, that is a very sort of tanha. I was meaning tanha, right? As you know, I mean, tanha manifests itself in weak ways. Tanha manifests itself. I was meaning the entirety of tanha.
Okay, in that case, yeah.
Of course, Ragam is going to be a packet of chips.
So I was quite confused when you said, okay, and then, yeah, I don't know whether that's what Dil meant.
No. I was not talking with regards to a packet of chips. I was talking with regards to tanha, you know, which is then, of course, the highest form of that tanha is, of course, the attachment to being, not
Ruparaga, yeah.
You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any more questions?
Wanted just to say, because you were speaking on the packet of chips, I was thinking that was like Kama Chanda, and this is Rupa Raga and things. So that's the reason why in my...
You were thinking Kama Chanda, because the Kama Chanda
is... that's what I was saying. Yes, Kama Chanda was cut off. That's what it was. But I was telling it's Rupa Raga and Arupa Raga. So I was explaining those two were there, but in my mind, the association was because that's the way we have always been shown that chart.
You were questioning enlightenment itself, you know.
No, when we are normally taught in our Dhamma sessions, Bhante, people just say Kamachand and we have a weakened and lot. But we always told Rupa and Arupa Raga. So I suppose when you say Raga, there is attachment there. But the attachment to food and to the sensual desire is what is cut. So that's clear. Thank you, Bhante.
All right. So any other questions with regards to what we did today?
Bhante, when you were explaining and when we are talking about Dhamma Vichaya and making these indriyas into balas, so you have to write, like almost be like enlightenment, have that kind of knowing or understanding. So for most people before they die, if they have been practicing the Dhamma very often and meditating and things, that feeling of non-self and things you have reflected so often that even if you're not in the enlightenment, maybe that it will come that, you know, that this is not the same person or the other person, or the sense of not self. But actually anybody who has not been regularly practicing and reading the Dhamma and meditating and looking at anicca dukkha anatta and, you know, reflecting at that, therefore when they go to die, actually they can never kind of come to terms with the fear of death and separation and leaving behind people. Am I right in thinking like that?
Well, I don't think it would be fair to think in that manner. But of course, it sounds just the logical way to sort of come into a sort of a, I mean, you can't say logical, but it seems like that is what we are implying. But I think, you know, people, I think for people, of course, to be able to die happily, you don't essentially need to be a Buddhist or need to sort of, follow in Dhamma. The path is towards liberative enlightenment, right? It is not a way of dying happily. I think there are persons in the world who have lived full, happy, compassionate lives in a way that they are able to let go by means of their, the way that they've conducted themselves in life. But then some beings might, of course, struggle. And I don't think it would be fair to say that only Buddhists would go to higher planes, because I mean, look at the world. I mean, there are so many people who are not Buddhists, there are so many people who have no religion whatsoever. How did they get here? Living extravagant, good lives, right? How did they get here? I don't think it would be right to assume that. The focus here is Trihetuka Patisandhi, which would aid the enlightenment path, right? Which would aid the enlightenment path, to develop that sense of, to develop an ability to continue along upon the path, although through even after death.
Bhante, if you're a Christian, really, all my Christian, they're quite happy at it, because if they lived a good life the Christian way, they believe that they're going. In fact, I know of people who, when they have got to come into sometimes terminal illnesses and they're Christian and the born again movement, they have actually converted because they feel that if they have lived as good Christians, there is this happiness that they're going to be one with God, I don't know, in heaven or some permanent state of happiness. So actually a lot of Christians who practice, they're quite happy even at the death. They're very different to Buddhists who are not practicing, because they have this karma thing and dying moment, and so they are very much more upset at the time of death, because they feel that if they are in pain and all these things. So I think really a lot of Christians are quite, they have, because of their practice, their religion, and they're quite happy because they're going to be one with God, and their celebrations. I've gone for funerals where everybody sings, and because they're going to be one with God, when that coffin is put in.
Well, yes. With regards to, something that I always like to say is whatever puts you to sleep, because I think happiness is the main key. Not only Christians, even the Hindus who bathe in the river Ganga, right? Who believe that they are absolved of sin, that happiness that they have, that satisfaction that they have to be absolved of sin, based on the belief that they have been just by bathing in the river Ganga, in a similar way gives people a sense of detachment from what they have done. But remember, it is not something which will sort of completely eradicate it. It is not something that can reduce the effects of karma. It is not something that can lead one towards nibbana, for sure. But at the end of the day, it's that sense of happiness also, right? Especially when it comes to death, being able to realize, oh, I've lived a good, happy life, and it is only good manners to know when you put the spoon down and stop serving yourself. And death is where you put the spoon down and stop serving yourself. And it is only people who have that level of emotional intelligence who then realize, okay, I've had my share, let the others enjoy. And I think that is, I agree, a lot of, all religions actually, regardless of religion, I think this is truly human values, right? This is truly a result of a person who's lived a happy life, surrounded by loved ones, surrounded by true connection, surrounded by things that would truly help in realizing or coming to understand that, you know, it's time for me to go. Yeah. Right. Before we end, with regards to Dhamsiri's question yesterday about Passa Nirodho, when it comes to the Paticcasamuppada Dhamsiri, right? When it comes to the Paticcasamuppada, the Passa Nirodha within the Paticcasamuppada is spoken of within the 3 times, right? Within the 3 times. So if we are to get rid of the, get rid of the earlier stages, then in the Vartamana, then in the future or in the present, then that affects the stages that operate. It doesn't specifically relate to, or within the Abhidhamma, it is very difficult to go into an exact moment of consciousness and say, okay, this is what happens, because we do not have the detail, right? We do not have the detail. And like, for example, when we take, for example, the Nirodha Samapatti, or if we take Asanna Sattabhumi again, the consciousness ceases to exist. Then the question arises, what ceases it? Is it the Kamma? It is not the Kamma. It is the consciousness itself that ceases itself. It is the consciousness that arises or arouses itself at the end of it as well, right? And when the mind is trained to such a state, such anomalies do happen by the owing to the power of that high state of mind, and this is mitigated by the level of, again, experience that is seen within that consciousness, or through that consciousness, or through the practitioner's eyes, the level to which, the depth to which experience of reality goes. Because for a Panchadvara Vajana, Panchadhyanika Pudgala, his reality is far more different from how we would see reality. That is owing to what he has seen and experienced as a part of reality. This is not to say that our reality is wrong or his reality is wrong or right. This is to say that there is a finer view of what reality truly is. Right? So again, because I asked this monk, I called him and I asked, you know, and he also said it is very difficult in Abhidhamma to go into that sort of pin exact thing, because we do not have enough details of the Abhidhamma to pinpoint that. If we go on to the Patthana, it is Asevana Pachya. Right? It is Asevana Pachya there.
Bhante, the whole thing, everything is came because of the Indriya Bhavana. Indriya Bhavana is actually a sutra, is the last sutra of Majjhima Nikaya. And in this last sutra of Majjhima Nikaya, Buddha explained how you carry out Indriya Bhavana. And in that, Buddha doesn't, I think he was against actually termination at the point of Passa. Definitely it will go to the feeling, and then once you have a feeling, then you have to contemplate on feeling on 3, in the sutra it says 3 aspects. One is Sankata, the feeling should be considered as Sankata. Sankata is actually impermanence of your feeling. And then you have to contemplate on Olarika. Olarika is the manifestation of materiality. And the last one is the Paticcasamuppanna. So by contemplating all these dharmas, actually, you turn your dukkha into upeksha. So that's how actually Buddha's recommendation of Indriya Bhavana. Indriya Bhavana, as soon as when you see your grandchild, we should not ignore your grandchild. You have a love toward her and you have a happiness, but that happiness, we should be able to limit it by considering these three levels of Dhamma, Sankata, Olarika, and Patisamana, and stop actually clinging on to your grandchild. So that's the important attachment. You have to actually avoid the attachment. I think I will suggest, Bhante, when we have next sutra, shall we go through the Indriya Bhavana Sutra in complete discussions?
Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. Because that's the last in the Majjhima Nikaya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, after group come, okay?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, after group come.
Yeah. Because we would have to take the Nandikaya Sutra also, that because that is where the Ajjatta and the Bahidha is also mentioned. Because we had to take the Ajjatta and the Bahidha when it comes to the sense reflection. Okay, let's do it. All right, everyone. See you on Wednesday. Okay, take care and have a good night. Right?
Good night. Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah.